The sky split open at exactly 3:14 Universal Time, and nothing in the galaxy was ever the same again. Commander Ralvarez of the Shalaic Science Corps had been stationed on Earth for 12 cycles. Observing humanity from a safe distance, his mission was simple: study the primitive species, record their development, and report back to the Galactic Council. Arel had always believed humans were chaotic, emotional, and dangerous, but mostly to themselves. They fought each other over meaningless borders, argued about resources, and ignored warnings from their own scientists. In his private reports, Ral described them as a fragile species, teetering on the edge of self-destruction. He never expected them to face a real threat from outside their planet. But then, the sky split, and everything changed. Giant rifts appeared in Earth's upper atmosphere, glowing with unnatural light. Through these rips in the sky came the Zyrics, swarmed the oldest and most feared enemy in the galaxy. The Zyrics were not machines or simple creatures. They were a biological force, a living empire of hive minds and bioships that consumed entire worlds. No negotiation, no surrender, only destruction. Arel knew this because his own people had once faced the Zyrics and barely survived, losing half their homeworlds in the process. Now, Earth was in their path. But something strange happened as the Zyric ships descended. The humans did not panic the way other species did. There were no mass suicides, no desperate pleas for mercy, no frantic attempts to flee the planet. Instead, Rael watched from his observation post as Earth's global communication networks stayed online, calm but focused. Military leaders from rival nations gathered in secret meetings. Scientists uploaded tactical data to shared networks. Civilians in coffee shops and living rooms streamed the footage of alien ships over their cities, but instead of collapsing, in fear they made jokes, posted memes, and shared survival plans. Rael found this behavior deeply confusing. In every galactic war before, the first step was always panic. But humans seemed to treat the apocalypse like just another challenge to overcome. As the first Zyrics biopods slammed into Earth's oceans, Forrest Real was summoned by the United Earth Defense Command. He was no longer just an observer. He had been assigned as an advisor to human military units, ordered to assist with knowledge of Zyrics biology. His first thought was simple: this is a waste of time. Humans cannot survive this. They don't have the technology, the firepower, or the genetic enhancements that other advanced species use in war. But orders were orders. He left his safe observation post and joined the human command teams at a secret base in Nevada. What he found there shocked him more than the invasion itself. Inside the military command center, human soldiers moved like a perfectly oiled machine, but not in the robotic way other species managed military control. Humans shouted, argued, disagreed openly in front of commanders. Plans were sketched, torn apart, rebuilt, and changed again within minutes. Rel's Shalaic mind struggled to process it. His species believed in precise planning, controlled emotion, and slow logical decisions. But these humans thrived in chaos. They weren't afraid of the confusion, they used it. A general named Monroe looked at Rel with tired eyes and said, "Welcome to the real war, friend. Around here, plans survive about 5 minutes, the rest is improvisation." Rel wanted to explain that improvisation was usually a sign of failure. In most species, it meant disaster. But Monroe simply handed him a tactical tablet and said, "Help us figure out what these things are made of. We're going to fight back." Raul studied the Zyrex footage. The creatures landing on Earth were advanced bioweapons, part ship, part living organism. Their outer shells were grown from neutron-rich carbon tissue, almost impossible to break with standard weapons. Their internal systems could adapt to almost any threat. Worse, they deployed pain fields, biological frequencies that triggered agony in enemy nervous systems, making resistance impossible for most species. Arel explained all this to the human leaders, expecting them to fall into despair. Instead, they nodded calmly. "So, they're tough," Monroe said. "We've handled tough before." Another general laughed softly. "Yeah, try growing up in a species that enjoys pain as entertainment. Ever seen our boxing matches? We literally pay to watch people punch each other until they collapse." Raoul's translator flagged the statement as illogical, but no one corrected it. Human soldiers prepared for battle with strange rituals, jokes, stories, shared meals, even loud music. The stress level in the room should have broken their minds. Instead, it seemed to make them sharper, faster. Raoul's alien. Biology could not understand it. His people had long since removed such emotional chaos from their lives. But humans? They leaned into it. They used it as fuel. Outside, the Xyrix swarm began landing in populated areas. Giant bioships released smaller organisms, beasts of war with claws that could slice through steel. Cities activated emergency protocols, but again, the panic Raoul expected never came. Civilians organized themselves, helping each other, setting up shelters, defending neighborhoods. The human military launched attacks not perfectly coordinated, but fast, creative, and relentless. Raoul monitored the battle feeds, stunned by what he saw. Human pilots took insane risks, flying directly into Xyrix attack zones, using unpredictable flight patterns that AI defense systems couldn't calculate. Ground troops used primitive weapons mixed with modern tech, improvising traps that other species would never dare attempt. Even when injured, they fought harder. Raoul realized something horrifying and beautiful at the same time. Humans were built for this. Their entire evolutionary path had prepared them for impossible situations. Chaos wasn't their weakness. It was their natural state. Fear made them smarter, not weaker. Pain pushed them forward, not backward. Loss taught them new tactics, not despair. As the first battle raged on, Raoul found himself no longer just an observer. He was part of the defense team, sharing his knowledge of Xyrix biology, helping humans adjust their strategies in real time. For the first time in his life, he felt something strange in his chest, not fear, but a deep, thrilling sense of purpose. Humanity was not losing. They were learning, were evolving during the battle itself. And in that moment, Raoul Varys understood the terrifying truth. The Xyrix had picked the wrong species to invade. The third day of the invasion began before the second had truly ended. On Earth, the human forces no longer bothered to mark time by sunrise or sunset. Battles were continuous now. Waves of Xyrix bioships struck cities, oceans, deserts, and spaceports without rest. But humanity did not rest either. They had entered a new state of existence, one that no other species in the galaxy had ever witnessed. It was not just war, it was evolution in motion, happening live on the battlefield. Commander Raoul Varys of the Galactic Science Corps stood at the edge of what remained of the Nevada command base. Eyes wide, his mind barely keeping up with what he was seeing. Humans were doing something impossible. They were using pain as a weapon. It started when the Xyrix released their most terrifying technology, the pain field emitters. These living devices sent bioelectric pulses into the atmosphere, triggering agony in every nervous system they touched. In previous wars, these weapons had ended entire civilizations. The Graxians had fallen to their knees, their leaders begging for mercy within hours. The Velcrin defense armies had surrendered immediately, unable to handle the unbearable sensation of being torn apart from the inside. Even Rel's own people had no defense against it. Shalayak warriors collapsed when exposed to the pain. Waves, their minds shutting down to escape the torture. But the humans didn't collapse. They screamed, yes. Their bodies shook. Some vomited. Some fell to the ground. But then they stood back up. Over and over, they got to their feet, eyes red. Faces twisted in agony, but with their hands still gripping weapons. Some of them laughed through the pain, their voices cracked but defiant. Others used the agony to trigger what they called adrenaline spikes, pushing their bodies past normal limits. Soldiers who should have been disabled by pain instead moved faster, thought quicker, and reacted with terrifying precision. Raoul could hardly believe it, but the data was clear. Human brains didn't just endure pain, they used it as fuel for survival. General Monroe explained it while tightening the straps of his body armor. Pain tells us we're alive, Raoul. It's not the enemy, it's the signal to fight harder. His voice was rough but steady. We're not designed to shut down when things hurt. We're designed to adapt while it hurts. That's the difference. In Shalaya culture, pain was something to be avoided or medically erased. But humans had evolved differently. Their bodies produced endorphins and chemicals that allowed them to survive incredible trauma without losing function. Their minds had developed cultural tools to handle suffering stories, jokes, songs, shared rituals. They built entire sports around controlled pain, from boxing to endurance races. And now on the battlefield, those strange behaviors were turning into military advantages. Rail watched as human medics used pain management not to stop pain, but to control it. Regulating soldier chemistry in real time, new injections were created overnight, chemical mixes that balanced agony and focus, keeping fighters in the perfect zone between collapse and maximum performance. Dr. Alina Shao, the lead battlefield biochemist, smiled grimly when she handed Raoul the report. "We've learned how to weaponize our own suffering," she said. "That's something the Xyrics didn't plan for." In the field, Raoul observed human units moving into zones saturated with Xyrics pain waves. Their bodies twitched and trembled, but their eyes stayed sharp. They used new techniques developed just hours before breathing patterns. Focus triggers, shared signals that kept their minds aligned even while their nervous systems screamed. Pain wasn't stopping them, it was transforming them. The Xyrics, meanwhile, showed no signs of understanding what was happening. Their species was designed for control, not learning. They had evolved to dominate weaker systems, to overload enemy senses and force surrender. But humans weren't following the script. Every time the Xyrics adapted, the humans adapted faster. Every weapon the Xyrics deployed became a new problem for humanity to solve, and each solution made them stronger, not weaker. At one point, Rael stood beside a human sniper team in the shattered ruins of an old city building. The air shimmered with Xyrics psychic interference, but the sniper, a woman named Sergeant Diaz, whispered calmly into her cums, eyes locked on her target through the scope. "They think we break." She whispered to no one in particular. "But breaking is just part of the process." Her shot fired. Xyrics commander's bionode exploded in the distance. Another piece of the invasion force fell. Elsewhere, human units used pain-based feedback loops to develop new tactics. Soldiers placed themselves intentionally in pain fields to test thresholds, feeding data back to Central Command so scientists could adjust support measures. Every moment of suffering became part of the battle intelligence system. There were no wasted experiences. Everything, even agony, was information. Raoul felt his own body reacting to the human strategy. His Shalayak biology wasn't built for this level of chaos. But his mind was changing. Slowly, painfully, he began to understand that humans had not just evolved physically, they had evolved mentally and culturally to handle the worst possible scenarios. They had trained themselves to grow stronger inside disasters. When the third wave of Xyrics beasts attacked, releasing venomous spores into the air, human troops responded with something even more shocking. They let the spores infect them. Other species would have sealed off their bodies. Human scientists studied the infection live, developing countermeasures inside their own systems. Antibodies were generated in real time. Nanobot treatments were created not in sterile labs, but on the battlefield itself. Inside infected soldiers who willingly became living test subjects. Dr. Zhao's team called it combat biochemistry. It was no longer about preventing harm. It was about using harm as raw material for innovation. By the end of the third day, Raoul stood in the command center, watching data streams flow across every screen. Human adaptation curves had outpaced the Xyrics. The enemy, once unstoppable, was now confused. It was unsure how to handle a species that got stronger the more it suffered. Raoul recorded another private log, his mind racing with possibilities. Xyrics designed their weapons for species that fear pain. They never considered what would happen if they attacked a species that embraces it. Humanity is not fighting this war the way other species would. They are not surviving in spite of the pain, they are surviving because of it. As the sun set, though no one really noticed any more, humanity prepared for the next phase of battle. They weren't just holding the line, they were redefining the rules of war itself. And Riel, once a distant observer, now found himself standing not beside them, but with them. The battlefield smelled of burning soil and strange alien chemicals. The first wave of the Xyrix invasion had crashed across Earth like a living storm, but humanity had not collapsed. Instead, they had pushed back with something no other species in the galaxy had ever shown before: adaptation in real time. Commander Real Varese watched from the human command center, still struggling to process what he was seeing. In every galactic war before, species responded to threats with old strategies. They used technology they already had. They followed military protocols developed over decades. But humans did something different. They changed their entire way of thinking while under attack. This wasn't evolution over thousands of years. It was adaptation happening in minutes. In the first 12 hours of the invasion, Earth's forces had already updated their tactics 6 times. The Xyrix sent bioships that dropped acid-spitting beasts onto cities, so humans modified drones to deliver neutralizing chemicals made from household products. The Xyrix deployed psychic shockwaves meant to paralyze nervous systems, but human soldiers responded by developing jamming devices using simple white noise machines. Raal realized that humanity had an advantage no one in the galaxy had ever noticed before. They were experts in making use of chaos. They didn't just survive uncertainty, they thrived in it, in a private moment. General Monroe explained it like this: "You know why humans are different, Raal? Because we evolved on a death planet. Earth tried to kill us every day. Volcanoes, earthquakes, predators, disease. You name it, we faced it. And we didn't do it by becoming the strongest. We did it by becoming the fastest learners." His eyes were tired but sharp. "We break easy, but we rebuild even faster." Raal checked the data streams again. Human social networks weren't collapsing. They were helping the military. Civilians sent real-time information about Xyrix troop movements through social media feeds. Hackers developed software on the fly, sharing it freely with government forces. People in every time zone were awake, watching, learning, building strategies. In living rooms, kitchens, basements, and coffee shops, children built traps using toys and scrap metal. Mechanics turned cars into armored personnel vehicles overnight. Farmers rigged drones to deliver explosive seeds into enemy nests. It wasn't military strategy, it was a global swarm of creativity. Xyrix had never faced anything like this before. In every past war, they overwhelmed their enemies with superior biology and mental domination. But human minds were not like other minds. When the Xyrix tried to insert psychic commands into human thoughts, they encountered something unexpected: noise. Human brains weren't clean, organized systems like other species. They were messy, filled with conflicting ideas, emotional feedback, loops, memories of pain, joy, and trauma layered over each other. The Xyrix hive mind could not control such unpredictable complexity. Raal watched as human scientists analyzed captured Xyrix tissue samples. They worked without sleep, feeding data into AI systems that redesigned weapons in real time. Scientists argued, laughed, and sometimes cried, but the work never stopped. One of them, a woman named Dr. Elena Shao, explained the human method. Simply, we don't aim for perfection. We aim for improvement every minute. Good enough, then better again. That was when Raal truly understood the difference between humans and the rest of the galaxy. Other species planned for stability. Humans planned for constant change. That was why Earth's technology evolved so fast, why their cultures shifted so rapidly, and why no other species could predict them. They were built to face disaster not once, but over and over each time, getting smarter, faster, and more dangerous. As the second wave of Xyrix bioships arrived, Raal stood beside human troops at the Nevada Defense Base. The sky above glowed red from alien energy bursts, but the soldiers didn't flinch. They adjusted their helmets, checked their weapons, and smiled at each other. Some of them shared personal stories before battle. One soldier talked about his daughter's first steps, another joked about bad coffee. These conversations made no sense to Raal. Why speak of life's small moments when death was near? But then he realized This was their way of staying sharp. Fear didn't break them, it focused them. The Xyrex released new weapons, bioengineered parasites that could invade a host body within seconds. Other species would have fled, but human medics armed with hastily designed nanobot injectors countered the parasites almost instantly. They weren't waiting for perfect solutions. They were experimenting during battle. Every failure taught them something new. Every mistake became a lesson. General Monroe led from the front, standing with his soldiers even as alien spores rained. From the sky, his voice echoed through the comms. "This is what we do, people. We get knocked down. We get back up smarter. Let's show the galaxy how humans fight." Ryle found himself running alongside human units, using his knowledge of Xyrex anatomy to help target weak spots. He should have been terrified, but instead, he felt a strange sense of belonging. For the first time in his life, he was not a distant observer, was part of the chaos, part of the adaptation. His own Shalaic mind began to shift, learning to react faster, to accept uncertainty as a tool instead of a threat by the end of the second day. Earth's defenses had not only survived, they had pushed the Xyrex back in several regions. Human weapons had evolved from simple bullets to biomechanical hybrids, mixing alien tech with Earth materials. Soldiers used 3D printers to build new armor between battles. Civilians sent in ideas through open-source apps, and engineers tested them on the spot. The battlefield had become a global workshop. As Arel looked at the tactical map, he realized something terrifying. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were getting better at it with every hour. Their capacity to adapt had no ceiling, no limit. The Xyrex thought they had invaded a primitive world, but they had actually triggered the fastest military evolution in galactic history. RL recorded a private log that night, his words quiet but firm. "The galaxy has always feared the strong, the fast, and the ruthless. But we have made a mistake.
We overlooked the real danger."
The true power is not strength or speed, it is the ability to change faster than the enemy can understand. Humans are the masters of that power." As Earth prepared for the next battle, Raul understood what was coming. Humanity would not just survive this war. They would redefine how war was fought. The fifth day did not begin with silence or rest. It began with a broadcast that echoed across every human device, every ship, every battlefield. The message came from the Xyrex swarm, transmitted in the universal galactic language. For centuries, the Xyrex had never spoken to their prey. They simply attacked, consumed, and moved on. Now, facing the impossible resistance of humanity, they tried something new. Their message was a mix of sound and thought, a psychic vibration layered with words. It said, "Cease resistance. Surrender your planet. Join the swarm or be erased." But humanity had no intention of surrendering. They didn't respond with negotiation. They responded by launching Project Fury. Commander Rael Varus stood in the underground command hub of Earth's allied forces, eyes locked on the swirling data feeds of the neural system. For days, he had watched humanity adapt to every horror the Xyrex unleashed. Pain fields, psychic attacks, biological plagues, none of it had stopped the humans. If anything, each new threat had made them smarter, faster, and more terrifyingly creative. But Project Fury was something else entirely. It was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a learning system. At its core, Project Fury was a massive AI network connected to human minds across the planet. Every loss, every failure, every tactical mistake was uploaded instantly. The system did not hide from errors, it studied them relentlessly. Humans fed their defeats into the machine like fuel. Fury analyzed every death, every injury, every wrong decision, and turned those failures into new strategies in real time. Where other species saw loss as weakness, humans used it as a weapon. General Monroe stood beside Rael, his voice low but full of energy. "This is how we win, Rael. Not by being perfect, but by being impossible to stop learning. The more they kill us, the smarter we get." Raul had never encountered a system like this. His own species, the Shalaic, removed failure from their culture. They believed in careful planning, avoiding mistakes at all costs. But humans had evolved on a planet that punished hesitation. They didn't just tolerate failure, they embraced it as part of progress. With Project Fury, this mindset had become a technological force. In the battlefields above, Fury controlled drone swarms that rewrote their own programming mid-flight. Tanks modified their armor using data from recent hits soldiers received. Neural updates during combat, adjusting strategies based on real-time simulations running thousands of scenarios per second. Fury wasn't a cold machine, it was built with human emotional data, meaning it prioritized not just victory, but the survival of as many lives as possible. It learned from grief. It learned from fear. It learned from courage. And it shared these lessons with every connected human instantly. The Zyrex tried to counter this with brute force. They unleashed their World Eater's giant bioconstructs designed to strip planets down to molecular sludge. But Fury responded by guiding human scientists to weaponize Earth's own unique environment. The system discovered that certain viruses, harmless to humans, were deadly to Zyrex biotissue. Within hours, those viruses were modified and deployed, infecting the enemy's giant creatures. It wasn't just about technology anymore. It was about turning Earth itself into a defense system. Rial watched in awe as human forces began controlling local ecosystems to fight back. In the Amazon, trees were seeded with nanobot spores that attacked Zyrex ground troops. In the oceans, modified whales carried sonar disruptors that interfered with bioship communication. Even the insects were part of the war now genetically. Tuned bees, wasps, and ants spread anti-Zyrex agents through natural swarms. The entire planet was fighting at one point. Rial asked Dr. Elena Shao how humans could process so much information so quickly without breaking. Her answer chilled him. "Don't avoid overload," she said softly. "We go through it. We crash, then reboot. It's faster every time." This explained why human minds could absorb horror without shutting down. They weren't designed to avoid trauma, they were designed to integrate it and keep going. Project Fury didn't erase human emotion. It used it. Fear triggered faster reactions. Anger sharpened focus. Love for family and friends fueled the will to survive. It was a loop of experience and adaptation, running faster than any alien species could predict. The Zyrex, designed for domination, were now facing something they had never encountered before, an enemy that improved when wounded. Every time the Zyrex killed a human unit, the data from that loss fed into Fury, making the next unit smarter and harder to kill. This wasn't just defense anymore, it was escalation. Humanity wasn't fighting to survive. They were evolving, the very definition of war. In one battle over the remains of Tokyo, human soldiers used lessons learned from fallen comrades to defeat an entire Zyrex division in less than 30 minutes. The AI fed tactical data into exosuits, allowing troops to move like extensions of Fury itself. No single general controlled the fight. The whole network did. It's millions of human minds, connected by purpose, grief, and invention, directed the battle together. Rial stood at the edge of a command balcony, watching the city's holographic display. Light up with green markers, victories, pushbacks, successful counterattacks. He realized he was no longer a Shalaic observer. His mind was part of the network now, learning alongside the humans, changing in ways he couldn't reverse. And he didn't want to reverse it. For the first time, he felt alive in chaos. The Zyrex queen minds, realizing they were losing control, tried to adapt by creating new war forms faster, more aggressive, more brutal. Not the problem was simple. The Zyrex could only adapt in pre-designed ways. Their evolution was limited to what their genetic memory allowed. Humans had no such limits. They didn't evolve through genetics anymore. They evolved through ideas. By the end of the 5th day, Project Fury had redefined Earth's military systems. The planet wasn't just defending itself, it had become an accelerator of tactical intelligence. Human culture had shifted into overdrive, blurring the lines between civilian life and battlefield learning. Teachers, students, doctors, artists, and engineers all contributed ideas through Fury's open network. In humanity's mind, there was no difference between creativity and survival. It was all the same thing now. RL recorded his daily log. With steady hands, his alien heart beating faster than normal. We believed for centuries that the strongest species would dominate the galaxy. But we were wrong. It is not strength that decides the future. It is the species that can learn the fastest under pressure. And humanity has just become unstoppable. Outside, the war raged on. But inside, something new was happening. Earth was no longer just a planet under attack. It was becoming the most dangerous classroom in the universe. By the fourth day, the war was no longer just a battle for Earth. It had become something much larger. The Xyrix swarm, for the first time in its ancient history, faced an opponent that refused to follow the pattern. No species had ever done this before. Normally, the Xyrix would launch wave after wave of terror until their enemies collapsed from mental overload. But humans did not collapse. They did not shut down under stress. Instead, they evolved with every attack, and now they were doing something even more dangerous. They were changing their minds in ways no alien species had ever seen. Commander Rael Variz of the Shalaic Science Corps stood inside the Human Neural Command Center. His alien senses overwhelmed by what he was witnessing. Rows of human soldiers and scientists sat in neural-linked chairs, their heads connected by thin cables to adaptive battle systems. But these were not normal tactical interfaces. The humans were not just sharing information, they were merging thoughts, ideas, and emotions in real time. They had built a hybrid consciousness network. Each person's brain became part of a living, thinking machine in other species. This kind of psychic link usually led to disaster. Minds were not built to be connected. Conflicting emotions, memories, and fears would rip the system apart. But humans had evolved something different, chaotic, adaptive mental structure that could handle disorder. Where other species needed perfect harmony, humans thrived in imperfect collaboration. They argued, they doubted. They brainstormed new ideas, even as the battle raged on. And somehow this mess of thoughts became a powerful tool, linked into the human system carefully, using his Shalaic neural translator to avoid being overwhelmed. What he experienced next shocked him to his core. He felt not just human thoughts, but human memories, hopes, fears, and dreams, all mixed together with tactical data. There were flashes of childhood, moments of loss, images of family dinners, alongside blueprints for weapons and maps of enemy positions. It made no sense logically, but emotionally it created a deep, unstoppable drive. Protect each other, survive together, learn faster than the enemy. The humans called it Project Mindstorm, a collective intelligence system designed to process battlefield information beyond the limits of any single brain. They didn't remove emotions from the system. They included them as part of the decision-making process. Rael realized this was the secret weapon no alien race had ever considered. Emotional intelligence as a survival tool. The humans weren't just solving tactical problems. They were solving them with empathy, pain, love, and rage combined into one evolving strategy. In the field, human troops fought with new coordination. Units shifted tactics mid-battle, responding to unspoken signals. Shared through the network, one soldier would spot a weak point in a Xyrix creature's armor. Another, miles away, would instantly adjust artillery fire to exploit that weakness. Medics administered treatments based on real-time biological feedback from injured troops. Engineers printed new weapon designs during active combat, formed by the collective mind's rapid analysis. The Xyrix tried to counter this with their own hive mind tactics, but their system was rigid. The Xyrix shared thoughts, yes, but only pre-approved patterns from the central queen minds. They couldn't handle creative ideas or emotional input. They followed orders, while the humans followed possibilities. That made them unpredictable. RHEL watched as the Xyrix deployed their next weapon, psychoviral assaults designed to infect neural networks with fear loops and hallucinations. For most species, this attack would have destroyed mental cohesion, but the humans absorbed the hallucinations into their mindstorm system. Instead of breaking, they adapted. They used the nightmares as new data, developing countermeasures on the spot. Fear became part of the learning process, not a failure point. General Monroe stood in the neural center. his mind partially linked to the system, eyes glowing faintly from the interface lenses. His voice came through the comms, steady and calm. Let the Zyrex throw everything they have. We're not afraid of breaking. We're designed to break and rebuild better. That's the human way. Even the civilians were now part of the network. Children sent in creative ideas through school networks. Artists visualized enemy weaknesses in ways computers couldn't. Retired veterans, teachers, farmers, and mechanics joined the neural link, adding practical experience to the swarm of ideas. No contribution was too small. Every human became a node in the system, building strategies together. It wasn't about orders anymore. It was about collective survival. Raoul's own mind shifted in ways he couldn't explain. He began to feel human emotions, not as an outsider, but as part of the experience. He felt the loss of fallen soldiers. He felt the hope of parents protecting their children. He felt the burning need to outsmart the enemy, not just for victory, but for the right to keep dreaming of the future. For the first time, Raoul understood what humans meant when they said, "We fight not because we love war, but because we love life." As night fell, if anyone still counted time that way, Zyrex sent their elite bio-commanders into the fight. These creatures were taller, faster, stronger than any previous wave. Their minds operated on higher frequencies, designed to crush enemy leaders with direct psychic dominance. But when they tried to take over the human neural net, they failed. Zyrex commanders could not handle the noise of human thought. It was chaos, jokes, grief, dreams, and stubbornness woven together. The Zyrex tried to insert commands into the network, but instead of obeying, the humans turned the attack into a new weapon. They mirrored the psychic signals back, amplified by their own chaotic minds. The Zyrex commanders experienced something. For the first time in their history, fear, in one broadcast intercepted by the human system. Zyrex Queen Mind transmitted a desperate message to the swarm. This species cannot be controlled. Their minds are not compatible with domination. Their structure is defective, but Raoul knew the truth. Humanity's mind wasn't defective. It was adaptive beyond comprehension. By dawn, human forces had retaken several major cities. They were no longer just defending Earth. They were starting to push the invasion back into space. The neural network had grown beyond a battle system. It was now part of human life, connecting millions in shared problem-solving, emotional support, and real-time evolution. Humanity had become a living, thinking swarm of creative chaos. Raoul recorded his nightly log, his voice calm, but carrying a weight of awe. "They tried to invade our minds," he said quietly, "but in doing so, they opened a door to something they didn't understand. Humanity's greatest weapon is not strength or technology. It is the human mind itself, broken, rebuilt, connected, and unleashed." And in that moment, the galaxy itself began to change. The seventh day of the war began with something no species in the galaxy had ever witnessed before. Moment when the invaders. The Zyrex swarm tried to retreat. They sent pulses of recall signals through their hive mind, pulling back their bioships, retracting their ground forces, and abandoning key strongholds across Earth. The swarm had never done this in all of recorded history. They had never needed to. But now, for the first time, they realized the truth. They were losing not just the battle, but the entire evolutionary race commander. Raoul Varus stood on the surface of what had once been a Zyrex command spire in South America, now overtaken by vines genetically engineered by human scientists. These vines weren't just plants, they were biosentinels, programmed to convert Zyrex biomaterial into Earth-compatible nutrients. The Zyrex had tried to terraform Earth into a Zyrex-compatible world. But humanity had reversed the process. Earth was now reformatting the Zyrex instead. The withdrawal signals echoed through the neural network, picked up by humanity's hive of minds. Scientists, soldiers, and civilians alike received the same message. The swarm is retreating. But no one celebrated yet. Humans had learned something critical in this war. Retreat did not mean safety, it meant escalation. The Zyrex were regrouping, evolving, and planning something new. General Monroe stood with his team inside the vanguard. the hybrid warship that now served as Earth's mobile command center. His voice transmitted across the entire hive of minds. Network, reaching every human on the planet. "They're pulling back," Monroe said, his tone grim but focused. "But this is not the end. They're trying to find a new angle. We cannot let them reset the game." That was the key difference between humanity and every species the Xyrics had faced before. Others would have seen the retreat as a chance to rebuild, to rest. But humans understood something deeper. Wars are not just about weapons. They're about momentum. Humanity had momentum now. They had evolved too far, too fast. To stop now would mean giving the enemy time to catch up. That was unacceptable. Project Fury sent out new protocols. Every battlefield unit, every research lab, every connected human received the same directive. Keep pushing. Use the retreat as a learning opportunity. Accelerate. Across the globe, humans launched counter-adaptation campaigns. Instead of chasing the Xyrics physically, they attacked them biologically, mentally, and technologically. They released biodrones that infected retreating Xyrex warforms with viral code not to kill them, but to observe their next mutations in real time. This was not a battle for territory anymore. It was a battle for evolutionary dominance. RHEL watched as human teams mapped out future invasion strategies, not for defense, but for expansion. The conversation had shifted. Earth's leaders were no longer talking about survival. They were talking about preventing future invasions by taking the fight to the stars. Humanity had realized that defense would never be enough. The only true safety was to become too dangerous to attack. Inside the hive of minds, artists and engineers worked side by side, designing new starship prototypes that were not ships in the traditional sense, but adaptive life forms grown from Earth's new hybrid tech. These living ships would heal, evolve, and think along with their human pilots. Some would even carry human consciousness backups, allowing pilots to merge with their vessels entirely if needed. Death for some would no longer be the end. It would be a transition into new forms of life and strategy. In space, human satellites beamed signals to distant systems, sharing open-source designs for survival tech with other species. Humanity was not just defending Earth, they were rewriting galactic power dynamics. They offered alliances to species that had once feared the Xyrics, teaching them how to adapt faster, how to integrate failure into growth. Some alien races joined immediately. Others hesitated, unable to grasp the terrifying truth humanity had. Gone beyond simple war, they were now in the business of civilizational hacking. The Xyrics, retreating into deep space, found their own hive mind infected with human data loops. Memories, emotions, and sensory experiences from Earth were now embedded in their swarm consciousness. They tried to purge it, but human thought patterns were sticky, recursive, and impossible to fully erase. Humanity had evolved into a mimetic virus. Their ideas spread faster than any biological attack. Rahl stood in the Vanguard's observation deck, looking out at Earth's atmosphere, now glowing with strange new patterns. Weather systems had been modified to distribute nanoparticles that healed damaged ecosystems. The oceans shimmered with bioluminescent currents designed to protect marine life from future bioattacks. Humanity was not just recovering, they were upgrading their planet while they fought. And still, the hive of minds learned more. With every retreating Xyrex unit, new data poured in. Human scientists mapped the evolutionary limits of the swarm, discovering cracks in their biological coding. The Xyrex could adapt quickly, but only within certain parameters. Their minds were locked into survival-based programming. Humanity, by contrast, had no fixed pattern. They could choose chaos, creativity, or collaboration at will. They could invent new goals mid-battle. They could redefine the meaning of victory while still in the fight. General Monroe's next broadcast made that clear. "We're not here just to win this war," he said, his voice resonating through the network. "We're here to change what war even means." On the battlefield, human troops stopped thinking of themselves as soldiers in the traditional sense. They became explorers of survival. Each battle was not just a fight, it was an experiment, a lesson, a step toward something new. And humanity had decided that the only logical path forward was to become a species that no enemy could predict or control. Raul recorded his daily log, knowing it might be studied for centuries if any future historians survived this moment. His voice was steady but filled with awe. The Zyrex have retreated, but they are not gone. They are trying to rebuild. But humanity is not giving them the time. This is not a simple victory. This is an evolutionary acceleration event. The humans have decided that from this point forward, they will be a species that learns faster than extinction. They are not just defending their home, they are reshaping the laws of survival itself. And far above Earth, the stars waited silent, witnesses to the moment when a fragile, chaotic species from a blue planet fused to stop changing. The war was not over, but the universe would never be the same again. The sixth day arrived like a storm with no clear beginning. There was no sunrise that morning, only the glow of alien warforms darkening the sky. But humanity didn't pause, didn't retreat, didn't fall back into fear. Instead, they accelerated, moving faster, thinking harder, fighting smarter. The Zyrex swarm had unleashed every known weapon of biological war: neurotoxin spores, hive beasts, atmosphere shredders, and planetary siege worms that tunneled beneath entire cities. These tactics had destroyed civilizations across the galaxy for thousands of years, but on Earth, something unexpected happened. The humans began using the Zyrex's own weapons against them. Commander Rel Varez had never seen anything like it. He stood on the bridge of a human hybrid warship, half machine, half living organism, constructed in less than 24 hours by teams of human engineers working with data from the neural network. Project Fury. The ship wasn't built in a factory. It was grown and printed in pieces by thousands of decentralized nodes across the planet. Parts came from civilian garages, repurposed factories, and even home hobbyists connected through open-source design software. Soldiers assembled the pieces on the battlefield itself. The result was a warship that had no blueprint from the past. The humans had studied the Zyrex bioforms, learned how their tissue grew and adapted, and then said the four words no other species in the galaxy dared to say, "What if we copy it?" In the past, every species attacked by the Zyrex had tried to fight with pure defense or brute force. But humans weren't interested in following that pattern. They saw the enemy's strengths and decided to absorb them, twist them, and make them their own. The hybrid warship, called the Vanguard, was a living vessel with metal bones and biological skin. It breathed, healed, and even learned from damage taken in battle. The ship connected to the human neural network, allowing its systems to evolve mid-combat. Just like its human creators, Raul stood next to General Monroe on the ship's command deck. The walls pulsed softly, as if the vessel had a heartbeat. Monroe's eyes locked onto the battle display, showing Zyrex swarm clusters approaching low orbit. His voice was calm, but there was something new in his tone, not just confidence, but control. "They wanted to break us, Raul," Monroe said, quietly. "But they taught us how to grow stronger, so now we're going to return the favor." Across Earth, humans had started to merge biology and technology, not as an experiment, but as a necessity. Exosuits grew adaptive muscle fibers that responded to thought. Weapons restructured themselves during battle, adjusting shape and function based on enemy tactics. Soldiers wore armor that healed when cut, pulsing with living veins of nanotech fluid. Medical teams no longer waited for injuries to happen. They preemptively adjusted soldiers' DNA on the fly, creating custom antibodies for every new biological attack the Zyrex launched. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about outbiologying the biowarriors. The Zyrex responded by deploying their Planet Reaper units, massive organisms the size of cities, designed to drain life from entire ecosystems. But humanity didn't defend the planet in the old way. Instead, they used the Reaper's own feeding systems to inject viral countermeasures, rewriting the genetic code of the attackers while they fed. Within minutes, the Reapers stopped consuming Earth's biomass and started manufacturing defensive enzymes, accidentally healing the very ecosystems they were supposed to destroy. The Zyrex had designed unstoppable weapons. Humanity had turned those weapons into factories for planetary repair. Rael found himself at the center of a new kind of war, one that wasn't about destruction, but evolutionary hacking. Humanity wasn't just adapting to survive the invasion, they were rewriting the invasion itself. In the neural net, civilian scientists collaborated directly with soldiers. Farmers worked with biochemists to develop plants that absorbed Zyrex toxins and turned them into fuel. Ocean engineers modified jellyfish colonies to release microscopic drones that interfered with enemy biosignals. Children in classrooms helped design puzzle-based encryption systems that confused Zyrex communication nodes. On Earth, every mind was part of the war effort. There was no longer a difference between military and civilian. The entire species had become a distributed organism of creativity and survival. The Vanguard launched into the upper atmosphere, its organic engines pulsing with strange new energy patterns. Rael watched as the ship's living systems communicated directly with Earth's defense grid, sharing tactical updates not in words or data streams, but in chemical pulses and neural links. It was beyond what any galactic species had imagined possible. The Zyrex's greatest strength, their bioadaptive warfare, was now their greatest weakness. Humans had learned the system too fast, hacked it too deep, and were now out-evolving the invaders in real time. Aiel remembered the warnings his people had given him before his Earth assignment. Humans are dangerous because they are chaotic. They had said, their minds are unstable, their species is fragile. But standing here now, watching human forces grow stronger by absorbing alien biology, Rael understood that what the galaxy called chaos, humans called innovation. Their fragility wasn't a weakness, it was a feature. It broke often, yes. But every time they rebuilt, they came back smarter and harder to predict. In space, the Vanguard met the Zyrex High Command ships head-on. Bioplasma weapons fired. But the hybrid ship responded by growing new armor plates during the attack, adjusting its defenses like a living organism. Its human operators thought not in commands but in intentions. The ship responded to feelings. As much as calculations, rage made the cannons fire faster. Love for Earth focused the targeting systems with ruthless precision. Back on the surface, Project Fury had expanded into what humans now called the Hive of Minds. It was no longer just a learning network, it was a cultural shift. Humanity had embraced the idea that failure was not an ending, but a beginning. Every mistake fed the system. Every casualty taught the survivors how to be better. Every moment of pain became data for smarter survival. The Zyrex, unable to keep up with this learning curve, began to fracture. Their hive mind tried to adjust, but they were locked into a rigid genetic hierarchy. They had no system for learning from failure. They had never needed one until now. Rael recorded his nightly log, his mind connected to the hive of minds as he spoke. His voice carried both awe and quiet fear. This is no longer just a battle for Earth. This is a turning point for the galaxy. Humanity has figured out how to absorb the enemy's strength, adapt faster than biology, and turn war into evolution. The Zyrex came here to dominate, but now they are being rewritten at the genetic level. If this continues, humanity will not just defend their planet. They will become something the universe has never seen before, species that grows stronger with every attempt to destroy it. And outside, beneath the shifting skies and glowing rifts, the battle continued, but the direction of the war had already changed forever. On the 8th day, something happened that no human, no alien, no historian could have predicted. The war didn't end, but the rules of existence changed. The Zyrex swarm, after centuries of galactic dominance, after crushing civilizations and stripping entire planets to bone and ash, found themselves staring into a new kind of nightmare, a species that refused to freeze in evolutionary time. Humanity had broken the pattern, and now the galaxy itself was about to bend. Commander Ralvaris stood inside the core of the Nexus, the human-allied command structure orbiting Earth. It was no longer just a station. It was a living network node, half machine, half conscious. Connected directly to the hive of minds, Rao could feel the pulse of billions of human thoughts moving through him like a current. Memories, ideas, strategies, hopes. It was not chaos anymore. It was synchronized unpredictability, something that even his advanced Shalaic brain struggled to define. The Xyrix swarm, in deep space, had sent their final transmission. It was not a threat, nor a surrender. It was a question, broadcast to humanity across psychic channels. What are you becoming? And humanity answered not with words, but with action. On the surface of Earth, human-engineered life forms had already begun terraforming the damaged zones, not to return them to what they once were, but to improve them beyond pre-war conditions. Deserts bloomed with engineered flora that cleaned the air and stored solar energy. Coral reefs pulsed with biosentinels that protected marine life from future invaders. Even the cities had changed. Buildings grew like organisms, adapting to population needs in real time. But it wasn't just the planet evolving. It was the people. In the hive of minds, no human stood alone anymore. Motions, thoughts, and experiences were shared across a species-wide network. People still had individual identities, but now they also had access to a collective intelligence reservoir. A farmer in Nebraska could access battlefield strategies in seconds. A child in Tokyo could contribute ideas for new medical tech before breakfast. An artist in Ghana could design solutions for space travel, tested in virtual simulations by the global swarm before lunch. And above it all, the project called Mind Ascension activated. Mind Ascension was not about uploading human consciousness into machines. It was about merging human adaptability with physical existence in ways never tried before. Soldiers volunteered to become part of new hybrid forms, not just biologically enhanced, but fully connected to living systems around them. Their nervous systems linked directly to planetary defense networks, weather patterns, and even the shifting tides. These weren't cyborgs. They were human environment interfaces, living embodiments of Earth's defense grid. In orbit, new starships launched. They weren't ships in the old sense. They were biointelligent constructs, grown from Earth's hybrid labs and designed to evolve continuously as they traveled. Each ship carried fragments of human consciousness within its neural layers, allowing exploration, diplomacy, and war to be carried out by beings that were part human, part technology, and part something new. Rao watched the first of these vessels ignite its living engines. The ship, named Continuum, shimmered with a surface that looked like liquid thought. It did not fly. It grew through space, folding reality around itself using new physics that human scientists had developed by thinking beyond alien models. The galaxy had assumed faster-than-light travel was impossible without specific tech pathways. But humans had found a workaround by creating organisms that thought space into bending. Meanwhile, back in deep space, the Xyrix faced their final crisis. Their genetic structures, once thought unchangeable, were now infected with human pattern loops. The swarm's own biomemory was locked in recursive cycles of Earth-based thought. Some Xyrix creatures began dreaming, experiencing human memories as if they were their own. Others began questioning orders for the first time in Xyrix history. Their hive mind fractured, not from weapons, but from exposure to choice. The human network had not just defeated the Xyrix, it had rewritten the swarm's core coding. This was not conquest. It was evolutionary infiltration on Earth. General Monroe gave his final transmission to humanity and its new allies. "We are not returning to what we were before," he said, his voice calm, steady, but carrying the weight of something vast. "We are not just human anymore. We're humanity plus. We've learned that survival is not about staying the same, about outgrowing extinction." Ralvares recorded his last log, knowing the galaxy would study it for millennia. His voice was filled with both awe and quiet terror at what he had witnessed. "Humanity did not win this war by brute force," he whispered. "They won by turning war into evolution. They broke the loop. They refused to be prey. They refused to be static. They became something the galaxy has no defense against a species that treats every threat as fuel for growth. From this day forward, no alien world is safe, not because humans want conquest, but because their ideas cannot be stopped from spreading. And as the stars watched in silence, Earth's first evolutionary ships left orbit, not to invade, but to explore, expand, and teach. But any species that stood in their way would learn the hard way. When you try to break humanity, you only teach them how to break limits instead. The war was over, but evolution had just begun.